American Atheist stands up and fights for equal representation for atheists at the World Trade Center. Today on the Atheist Viewpoint, the lawsuit involving the Ground Zero Cross.
Hello and welcome to Atheist Viewpoint. I'm Dennis Horvitz.
And I'm David Silverman, President of American Atheists. Thanks for joining us. Today on the Atheist Viewpoint, we will be discussing the Ground Zero Cross, the lawsuit surrounding the Ground Zero Cross. Now, Dennis and I are both plaintiffs in a lawsuit that was filed earlier this month, and we wanted to do a show just about the Ground Zero Cross and why we're suing, what exactly we're suing for, and what exactly we hope to get from this whole thing. So Dennis, thanks for joining us on the show again today. You're one of the plaintiffs. It's American Atheists and a few other people from New York, including yourself.
Right.
And we're suing the World Trade Center. We're suing the Port Authority, who owns the land on the World Trade Center, and a few other organizations.
Governor Christie of New Jersey.
Governor Christie of New Jersey.
Mayor Bloomberg.
Mayor Bloomberg, Silverstein Properties, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. What are we doing here? And why are we doing it? Why don't you explain?
Well,
Or why don't you start?
well, first of all, it all started because immediately after the attack on 9/11, when they were going through the rubble and starting the cleanup process, it seems that a workman whose name I never learned had discovered that. I'm glad you're sitting down for this, by the way, that a crossbeam from one of the World Trade Center towers landed on the ground in the shape of a cross.
Now, this must have been the only crossbeam that survived. I mean, maybe it was the only crossbeam in the twin buildings?
I don't think I think you need many crossbeams.
And there was a pile of rubble with one straight cross sticking up the top?
Apparently it was just sticking up, and somebody thought that it was a sign from God that we hadn't been abandoned.
Let's get a little less snarky now.
Okay.
This was the biggest tragedy in American history, on American soil, or the biggest,
right?
In certainly in my recent memory, and it had absolutely nothing to do with Christianity.
Right.
Okay. 9/11 had nothing to do with Christianity.
Right.
Christianity hates that this had nothing to do with them. This was about Islam. This was about America. This was about capitalism. This was not about Christianity at all, except that Christians died.
Right.
But so did Jews. So did Muslims. So did atheists. Statistically speaking, hundreds more atheists died in 9/11 than there were Jews.
Right.
So what are they doing? They took this cross and they said, this was back in 2002, and they said, we should put this in a memorial for 9/11. And back then, we said, if you put a Christian symbol in the memorial, you're going to have to put one in for everybody. We'll donate something too.
Right.
Dead air. Dead silence. No response.
And it specifies in the lawsuit that American Atheists offered to do that at their own cost.
At our own cost.
Right.
Okay? We are not asking for any money from anyone except our members to fund this memorial at Ground Zero. And we've offered to do this a few times. Dead silence. Then they took the cross and they put it in front of a church. Guess what? Putting a cross in front of a church, it's fine. That's exactly where crosses should go.
Exactly, right.
That's where crosses should be. So they put it in front of a church, and then 2 weeks ago, they kind of said, oh, by the way, we're putting it in the memorial now.
Right.
They never announced it before. At least we haven't found any sort of recollection. We haven't found any sort of record that they actually announced it. They just said, oh, it's going in now. And when they put it in, this is something that had been blessed. This is something that had been prayed over, prayers etched into it.
Right.
This is a religious monument.
Unmistakably.
Unmistakably Christian.
Yes.
They installed it with a priest. They brought it to Ground Zero. They prayed over it. They had a religious ceremony. They sanctified the ground at Ground Zero for the cross.
Right.
They took this icon. They effectively made a religious shrine
Right. On public.
inside the memorial on public land with public money. Now, a lot of people ask, well, there's religious art in museums all over the country. Yes, there is, but they're not active shrines. They don't consecrate the grounds at the National Museum of Art to put in a painting. That's real art. A painting is real art. This is either a religious icon or it's scrap metal.
And in that context of the National Museum of Art, it's nobody is taking it as the government endorsing religion.
That's right.
It's put there as religious art, as another type of art.
Yes.
No one is saying that. No one is suggesting that the spot where spots where these paintings or whatever they are, is sanctified in any way.
Right.
It's not. They're not, like you say. They're not religious shrines.
Right. And this is a religious shrine.
Right.
On public land, put in with public money. No, it ain't going to happen. Now, it can happen, but if you've got a religious icon on public land and public property, the law is that everybody needs to be represented. So we go back to 2002 when we offered to put that in.
Right.
So 2 weeks ago, middle of July, we find out that this is going to happen, and we immediately send in emails saying, okay, you're doing this. If you're doing this, we'll donate again. We'll
Right.
donate it's got to be approximately equal size and approximately equal prominence.
Yes.
If that happens, we drop the lawsuit.
Right.
Because we don't have standing after that.
Right.
That's within the law.
Right.
What is happening right now, and this is where they kind of messed up, and I'm going to just call this out, okay? They had, at first they were saying it's not a Christian cross. At first they're saying, oh, it's for everybody. Then they're saying, oh, it's for all people of faith. And then, of course, nobody on the planet thinks that a cross is good for a Jew or good for a Muslim.
Or anybody else.
Right.
Or even it's not even good for Christians who are mature enough to keep their religion out of government.
This is true. This is true. So they put this cross in, and then after they called it secular for a while, then they pulled. Then we complained, and after we complained, they appear to have tried to have done this retroactive thing, which said, oh, we've always been asking for people to donate, for organizations to donate. We never heard that. We never got any response back.
You have no evidence of them having done that.
Nothing.
Right.
Okay? But they immediately said, oh, well, we're bringing in the Jews. We're bringing in the Jews. And they're bringing in the Jews not with an artifact.
No.
They're bringing in the Jews with post-9/11 art made by people from the rubble in the shape of a Jewish star. So they're bringing in,
the Jews are always useful for that.
They are a total token.
Yeah.
And they enjoy it, too. Well, I shouldn't say they enjoy it, but they take it. They don't mind being tokenized. And so it's as if they're saying, oh, well, we brought in the Jews, so we're constitutionally sound.
I think more to the point is that not enough Jews who resent being tokenized are speaking up. That's probably the real problem.
And really, that's true. And really, that's true.
As
But
with atheists, by the way, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, that's true. But when they bring in the Jewish memorabilia,
right.
They're bringing in a prayer shawl. They're bringing in a Jewish star made out of rubble. Well, that totally negates their argument that this is some sort of an artifact and it's secular.
Right.
So if it's not an artifact and it's not secular, if they're bringing in the Jews to compensate for the fact that it's Christian, then they're actually making our case for us.
Right. See, the thing is, if they're bringing in a prayer shawl, you said?
Yeah. A prayer shawl donated.
See, the thing is, they can get away with the Jewish star because, in fact, the Star of David is not, believe it or not, is not an official religious symbol. It is a cultural symbol. So they could have gotten away with it. But if they're bringing in but it's, technically. So, but bringing in a prayer shawl, I mean, that's unmistakable.
Of course it is. So they're endorsing what? Monotheism? They're endorsing Judaism and Christianity, but not Islam.
I wondered if the Sikhs got an invitation to submit.
You know what? I'll bet you they didn't. I'll bet nobody did. But they brought it in, and once they do that, once they bring in the Jews, they completely negate their argument that this is a secular memorial.
Right.
They completely negate their argument that this is architectural.
Right.
What they're talking about now is picking and choosing religions.
Right.
And like I said, more statistically speaking, far more atheists died on 9/11 than Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not that big of a point, because even if it was one, they still get to be represented.
Right.
And they still get to be represented equally. And that's all we're looking for.
Right.
That's all we're trying to do here. We're not trying to necessarily take the cross away. That's a good option. I do think that the cross should be moved to another, back to the church.
We're not saying they can't have their cross. They just can't have it in public property.
They can't have it alone
Right.
on public property.
Right.
Okay? They should have it back at the church.
Right.
In fact, what they should do is they should find a fair means to get that cross out to our church. It shouldn't necessarily go back to St. Peter's. Who said that St. Peter's gets to have the cross
Right.
in the first place?
Right.
You know, who says that St. Peter's gets to have the money that comes in, the tourism that comes in? They have to have a fair way. I think the best way to do it is selling it to the highest bidder.
Or if the National Council of Churches wants to buy some property and put it up.
They can do that.
Yeah.
You know, they can do that as long as it's, you know, not on public
It's not
land.
on taxpayer-supported money.
But if they want to put it on taxpayer on tax money, if they want to put it on the public grounds, they certainly can. But they can't do it alone.
Right.
They can't pick and choose. They can't say, okay, we're going to let the Christians have a shrine, an actual shrine, and not have anything for atheists. Not going to happen. And that's why we're fighting. And the amount of hate that we're getting, the amount of vitriol we're actually getting, actual death threats.
Yeah.
Blair Scott, our national communications director, was vandalized at his home. Yeah, it was vandalized because we're doing something legal and nonviolent in order to protest a lack of representation. Okay, this is the American way. This is what you do in America. And what we're getting is, and the next show we're going to play some good responses to this, some of the voicemails that we've gotten. But what we're getting to this is a Christian nation, get out. How dare you be so unpatriotic as to, oh, I don't know, do something totally American like protest and take legal and nonviolent means.
Like expecting the public, do something as un-American as expecting the government to obey its own laws.
Crazy. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. I mean, it's so sad that we're getting such vitriol, and of course we expected it.
Yeah.
You know, this is not something that we didn't expect. We
Right.
knew it was coming, but it's always sad when you're not pleasantly surprised at people's reactions. But people don't really care too much about facts.
No, I mean, this is not about facts. It's about emotion.
Well,
I mean, that's the root of the problem anyway.
it is about emotion, and it is about our emotions too.
Yeah, it's
No,
about
I mean-
it's about pedestrian sentimentality being passed off as values, and it's not the same thing.
No, it's not. And it's so depressing when we get that kind of response, the hate mail, the vitriol, when we're doing something completely ethical, completely American, within the law, unlike certain, well, lots of people, completely in a nonviolent way, completely non-threatening, and still we're hated. Too bad. Okay, too bad. That's not going to stop anything on our side. You know, and I want to make it real clear. You know, we can be snarky and we can be pushy, but we're not stopping here. We're not stopping for this. The 9/11 memorial is either going to include representation for atheists, or it's not going to have representation for any religious beliefs. That's the way it is.
What's wrong with just memorializing the people who lost their lives?
As it should be.
As it should be.
As it should be. Why do we have to inject
I mean,
religion?
that's the way grown-ups would handle it.
Going back to the original point that I made, 9/11 was not about Christianity. They're trying to make it about Christianity. That's what they want to do. How in the world can we have such a huge memorial and not have a Christian presence in it? How in the world can we have a site for the largest museum, the biggest tragedy on American soil since, what, the Civil War, and not have Christianity in it? That's what this is all about. It's about Christianity inserting itself into a secular event that had nothing to do with Christianity at all. It certainly had no more to do with Christianity than it had to do with atheism or Buddhism or Hinduism. Christians died. Guess what? It wasn't about Christianity. It was about, well, it was about Islam, and it was about capitalism, and to a certain extent, it was about Judaism.
And there were also Muslims who died.
Yes.
I'm wondering what the outreach was to the Muslim community. Zero, I'm guessing.
Can you imagine what would happen if the Muslims actually wanted to put a memorial in Ground Zero? I mean, I want them to try because it is their constitutional right, and I think they should. And if there are Muslims out there listening to this show, you should do it because you lost people, and your religion was severely influenced by 9/11, for better or worse. Of course, for worse. Your religion was severely influenced by 9/11. You should have a presence in the memorial if the Christians do. However,
and it was done by people inappropriately acting in the name of Islam. It was
well,
done by extremists.
You say inappropriately. They say it was completely appropriate. There's that judgment call. Okay, the extremists said that the good guy Muslims are awful Muslims, and that they were the right. Okay, so let's not make a statement of who's real Muslim and who's not real Muslim. Quite frankly, it's all real Islam. But my point is that Islam as itself was affected. Islamic people died. They should have a memorial. But can you imagine the outcry? I mean, they can't even have a mosque 2 blocks away without an outcry. They can't have a mosque 2 blocks away on private property without court orders. And lawsuits, and all they want to do is put up a mosque on their own property.
Now, am I wrong? But I understand that mosque was supposed to be built anyway, and would have been built even if the 9/11 attack had not happened.
I don't know.
Okay, I could be wrong.
I don't know. I know that as of right now, any sort of court order has been dropped, and they're going to move forward with it. And you know, I mean, I don't want any more mosques anywhere. I don't want any more churches anywhere. But in this country, they do have the freedom of religion, and they do have the freedom to put it there. But look at the outcry, and imagine the outcry if they actually had an Islamic symbol, anything, in Ground Zero, where they are entitled, where they are far more entitled to have something than the Christian cross, because Islam had something to do with it.
But in fact, I mean, you can't really stop there, because if the attack was an attack against America and against all Americans, by rights you should have the religious symbol of various religions, even if they weren't represented by people who died.
That's correct.
You know, so what you're going to have the Shawnee and the Comanches put their tribal religious symbols in there, or the followers of Bhagwan Rajneesh, or
no exceptions.
Yeah.
The whole concept of separation of church and state is that the government does not get the right to pick and choose which religion is in and which religion is out. That's the exact opposite of separation of church and state.
For the same reason you don't teach creationism in public school science classes, because then you have to include the creation myth of every possible conceivable religion, certainly within the United States borders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that doesn't stop them from trying, and that's not going to stop them from trying here. So we're suing on the basis of multiple laws, and we should mention this is not just a First Amendment issue. It's the First Amendment of the United States, the 14th Amendment of the United States, which allows for equal protection, the third article from the New York State Constitution, which reads, no person shall be denied equal protection of the laws in the state or any subdivision thereof, and the New York Civil Rights Act.
So there are four segments to this lawsuit, is that correct?
Well, three. Yeah, there's 5 laws that have been violated, okay? 2 laws in the U.S. Constitution, 2 laws in the New York State Constitution, and the New York Civil Rights Act. The New York Civil Rights Act says all persons within the jurisdiction of the state shall be entitled to the full and equal accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges of any places of public accommodations, resort, or amusement. So there's no equality if they're allowing a cross and a Jewish star and not the atheists. So they're clearly violative of a whole bunch of 5 different laws, and that's why we're suing. And we're not trying to give anybody a hard time. We're not doing this for publicity. We've been accused of doing this for publicity. If we're going to do something for publicity, this ain't it. This is not the publicity that we want.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But American Atheist isn't here for publicity.
This is not bound. This is not likely to make people like us.
No, nobody's going to like us because we're doing this lawsuit. But we have to do it anyways, because what happens if we don't? Well, then we're going to have a cross, a religious symbol, on public land funded by public money, and exactly what is the next step of that? On consecrated ground, prayed over, an active shrine on public land funded with public money. What exactly is the next step for that? What's everything is precedent in this game.
Yeah, and part of the reason why we're at the point where we're at is because in prior cases of separation in church and state, people weren't vigilant enough, and it did set precedences, which it shouldn't have done.
Right.
In God we trust on our currency.
And under God and the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, it all sets precedents, and it's not a loose, slippery slope fallacy. This is a real precedent-setting event that's not going to happen without restriction.
And it creates a sense of entitlement to certain people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it erodes the separation of church and state in a very real way. And, this is American Atheist Charter. We're not here to make friends.
Right.
We're here to do what needs to be done in order to protect the atheists and our atheist and the rights of atheists. And yeah, people might hate us. Too bad. Yeah, people might deride us. Too bad. Yeah, sometimes even from within the secular movement, we get crap from other people in the movement who don't get the fact that you need somebody to defend these rights. Well, that's fine. You do that, guess what? They're wrong. We're right. This is not something that we can just sit and stand back and let happen. This is something where American Atheists needs to stand up, raise their hands, and say, no. This is a time of grief for all of us. This is a monument for all of us. Well, and we will not be unrepresented in this event.
Right, and a problem too is that, I've said this before, and in some of the other shows that I've done, is that the separation of church and state is not just an atheist issue. It's like we should have religious groups filing on our behalf along with us.
I agree.
Because this is about the protection of freedom of religion, just as much as it is about the protection of freedom from religion.
But that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
Because even if they join or whether they don't, whether they stand behind us or not, we're still going to win this lawsuit for them.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're going to set the precedent for them. We're going to be the bad guys for them. If I were them, I wouldn't come on. Okay? I wouldn't take the heat.
Right.
I would just take the benefit of having some other organization take the heat and make this and make this happen and get equal representation in the World Trade Center. So that's what American Atheists is doing, and that's why we're doing it. If you have any questions, you can send us an email at info@atheists.org. Our website, of course, is atheists.org, and the email, well, you can send it to avtv@atheists.org as well. The next show that we're going to have is going to be some of the feedback that we've received. Ron Barrier will be joining us once again, and we'll be talking about some of the feedback that we've received and how wonderful Christian love is. Until then, I'm David Silverman.
And I'm Dennis Horvitz.
Thanks for joining us on Atheist Viewpoint, where reason reigns and reality rules.